I'm like, oh my God, maybe I can't flush the toilet. I don't know what to do. And I don't want them to eat because they'll be able to hear. And I stopped what I was doing in the middle. I came out. I asked my host, the kid who was my age, if it's okay to flush the toilet. He laughed. I begged him, please don't tell anybody. Of course he did, because I came out of the bathroom. Everybody was cracking up laughing. And that family was this family. When I came back to Israel after high school 2 years later, I called them up because I didn't know anybody else. I said, please come over I called on a Wednesday. Our son's in the army. Come over tomorrow on Thursday. I did. They said, would you like to come for Shabbat? I did. They said, would you like to come every Shabbat? I said, please don't say that because I'll take you seriously. They said, we mean it seriously. And I started going to them every single Shabbat. I became very close with 4 families in this area. One of them I was at a Sheva Brachot for their grandchildren a few weeks ago. Another one I saw a few weeks ago. And the 2 others who still live in Kiryat Moshe, I'm going to visit as soon as I finish with you guys. So I stayed in touch with everybody. They were wonderful, wonderful people. They are wonderful people. When I came to Israel, I was going to Hebrew University. You guys know who Jeff Seidel is?
Yes.
I was Jeff Seidel's very first person that he, as we used to say back then, peeled off the kotel. It was 1983. They hadn't finished. 1985. They hadn't finished the reconstruction of the old city. There were no lights. Guy jumps out of me from the dark, out of nowhere, in the middle of what's the big square today. But then it was just a building area. Puts his hand on my shoulder and pitch black says, "Hey, you Jewish?" And so I was very close with him. As time passed, I decided that being in Hebrew University was not the place I wanted to learn about Judaism, which is why I came to Israel. And I decided to go to yeshiva. I went to this Dani Loker, this family. I told him which yeshiva I wanted to go to. He said, absolutely not. Didn't speak a word to me. He said, come with me. Took my hand, got his car keys, went down. He lived in Ben Sion 23, Ben Sion 23. Drove in the car. We drove in front of this building. Not the new building, because that didn't exist. And he says, you wait in the car. I wait in the car. He comes back. He says, now come with me. Sits me down in front of Rabbi Gun and says, this is where you're going to learn. And then they were forced, we were learning Gemara and everything. I was a student of Rav Goldenberg, if you know who he was. And I just didn't like learning Gemara. I said to Rav Kleiman and Rav Goldenberg, I said, I'm not sure I believe in God, and you're forcing me to learn Gemara. I'm not ready for this. There were 3 levels of Gemara back then, and because of that, we created a program together. It was called the Emunah program. That was before you learn Gemara. I don't know if that still exists today or not, but that was my baby. I had a lot of interesting stories. I got arrested walking to Angels for being a peeping Tom and told I was never allowed on the street that time of night, and if I do, the police had orders to shoot me. And I'm not exaggerating. We had telling Rav Menachem before that we took a little puppy into our room, and Rabbi Gun, who never ever, in all the years I was in Machon Meir, never came into the room, and this dog never came out from under the bed. Rabbi Gun walks into the room, and the dog loves Rabbi Gun for some reason, runs and starts jumping on Rabbi Gun, and Rabbi Gun goes, Mazeh? He goes, Kelev? He says, Ken, ani yoder שזה כלב, אבל מה זה עושה פה? So he was very, very gracious about it. I learned here from Pesach 86 until the end of the summer of 87. Then I went to YU. Every summer in between, I came back and studied for 6 weeks in the Machon. One of the main reasons I came back and studied, I'm talking too much. One of the reasons I came back and studied in the Machon the first summer, I'm a tour guide. So I was leading a tour of Americans for 6 weeks in the summer, but I came 6 weeks earlier. And one of the reasons was that I would get arrested at the UN and things like that, protesting for Soviet Jews who were not allowed out of Russia. And I was eating one Shabbat by somebody, a Boston Chassid, who said to me, says, why are you wasting your time with that stuff? All we can do is be mispalel. And I got very angry because I don't believe all we can do is mispalel. And I said to him, okay, that's fine. If you think that, are you being mispalel? Because on May 4th of that year, Pamyat, which was an anti-Semitic political organization, was planning to do pogroms in all the Jewish communities in Russia. And that's why we were protesting at the Soviet Union. So I got so upset that I came back to Machon Meir. I spent 6 weeks researching Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'Zeh. All Jews are responsible for each other. I ended up writing this shiur, which was a lot more research. 6 weeks of research I put into this. And I just had a lot of special times. My ufruf was here.
I don't know Yiddish.
Oh, my ufruf, my Shabbat Chatan, the Shabbat before you get married when you get called up to the Torah. And there was another guy in Machon Meir who was currently learning. I learned here till 87, and then in the summers, this is 1994, I got married. So Rav Kleiman, tzaddik that he was the Sadr Kedushin. He did the wedding for the other guy, but he still drove at 11 o'clock at night to Bnei Brak so he could be part of my wedding a little bit also. So I have very special memories. If anyone's interested afterwards, I brought some pictures. This is the Machon Meir guys in front of the building celebrating Machon Meir. This is what Kiryat Moshe looked like before they built that, I think, horrendous bridge. This is what I looked like when I started Machon Meir, when I hadn't shaved or cut my hair for a year, and I came to class every day in a University of Florida shirt and University of Florida boxer shorts and flip-flops. And this is the summer of 1989 when I spent Shabbat with Rav Menachem. And then I have.
Is that the Rav?
I have other pictures here. I need to get to my speech because my speech is over an hour and we have less than an hour. Anyway, I have pictures of the Beit Midrash. I have the picture of when I got bored. Me and my friend went to sleep in the Yar Yerushalayim because we didn't feel like sleeping in the Machon that night and almost got eaten by 5 wild dogs. More pictures of the Machon. Sukkos in the Machon. This is a guy named Harel Chetzroni. Don't know if you need him. He was a friend of mine when he was 16. I got a reputation. Back then, B'nai Akiva, when you got sworn into B'nai Akiva, you had to scare the kids. So I got a reputation for being an excellent actor as an Arab to scare the kids. 3rd graders, 4th graders we're talking about. So he shows up in my room. Today he's very, very well known. He's an amazing speaker, but only in Hebrew. He kidnaps women who are trapped in marriages to Arabs and their children and saves them. His wife wrote an amazing book about it. He was one of my close friends. This is in my room in Machon Meir, which I think is room number 6 upstairs. And I have pictures of all my friends from Machon Meir. You should know that in all these pictures, every single person in this picture is still a close friend of mine. These 2 pictures were on the same day. I used to love the porch. I hung my laundry on the porch. I used to go out to the porch in the back. I just sat there all the time. I cut my hair there. This is me getting my hair cut.
Where's the picture in the Beit Midrash?
Here's all. I didn't. Okay, I took pictures of the empty Beit Midrash. This is me signing my Chavrutas Ketubah with Rav Kleiman. This is one of my most favorite pictures in the world. This is Rabbi Gun on Yom Matzmut and Yom Yerushalayim when he would take us and give us a tour of the battle to Yerushalayim. All the chief rabbis coming out of Merkaz Rav. Again on the porch with my haircut, and it's just. You're welcome to look at these pictures. This, by the way, Beitar, which is the most Haredi city in Israel today, was supposed to be a Dati Leumi city originally, and all Machon Meir went there. I have a picture of myself putting dirt in the cornerstone of Beitar. This is some of our Tiolim. Again, on the porch where I hung my laundry. I wanted to show my mom what I was doing in Machon Meir. And this is on Purim, in front of the Machon. Anyway, I spoke way too much about myself. Let's get now. If you have questions, I would appreciate if you write them down or say them to the end, only because I have a lot more to say. There's over 100 slides here that we're going to do. I hope maybe about half of them. We call this the Masad Tekhelet, the Tekhelet journey. Okay, and I want to start with the conclusion. And this is the conclusion. We have this hanging in our factory. On one hand, if you eat turkey, eating turkey is a kashrut problem. Okay, I'm not going to explain it to you because I'm not your Rav. You're welcome to speak to Rav Menachem about it after. But on one hand, if you eat turkey for which there's no tradition, yet if it's not kosher, you violate a mitzvah from the Torah. On the other hand, you don't wear Tekhelet because there's no tradition. Yet if it is not the right color, you still fulfill the mitzvah tzitzit from the Torah. There's no bracha on it. You're not losing anything. And this is basically, if you get nothing else out of what I'm saying today, this is what I want you to know. That you wear Tekhelet, you probably, maybe, are doing a mitzvah of the Torah, and you're certainly not losing anything. Okay, so there's a spectrum. Why do I not see anything here?
I did it to the best of my ability.
What's going on? What has to be
whose laptop is that? Is that our
My laptop.
Oh, it's your laptop. Okay, this is now it's a you thing. I can try to figure it out.
Okay. I'm pressing the button. I think you're seeing what's up. It's not.
That hasn't changed.
That was the house that we built to break up. Your brother.
We gotta tell the computer.
No, you're not sending.
I know. I'm telling the computer to stop being mean to me, but it's being mean to me. It's being very disrespectful. This is.
The guys that just walked in.
It says in the Torah, honor thy father and mother, which means that the laptop must honor you.
Rav Kahana didn't have his own yeshiva yet, so he would send everybody to Machon Meir. And at some point, Rav Bigun wasn't so happy with what some of the people were doing here, and asked them to please cut down on those activities.
I see.
He's a dentist in Woodmere, by the way. This guy.
That's the coolest T-shirt ever.
Yeah, take one. There's a raffling off of the safe. For the newcomers, there's a raffling off of the safe. You get to choose one. Take one. Rip it in half. Keep one and put one. Did you take a number? Rip it in half.
You look who's already there?
No.
It's a letter.
It's
just Where is it? Street Bridge or
You kept one for yourself?
No, that's right, yeah.
No, actually, you said
Yeah.
Street Bridge.
Yeah, there is. What do you do?
Laptop.
Yeah. Were you close to his laptop?
Not at all. I've met him several times. He called me a Nazi once. I asked him a question. I said, do you feel that your Kachnikim and other supporters are distorting your views and taking out of the context of halacha? And he said, you're absolutely right. I said, then how come you as a Rav don't do something? And you never asked Rav Kahana a question in front of people. You had to ask him privately, or he would really embarrass you.
Yeah.
Did you ask him privately?
I asked him privately afterwards.
Rafi and Yosef Chris.
Yeah.
Wow.
We have our students of 35 years ago. I remember them. Amazing.
And I asked, over the course of our conversation, I asked him the same question 4 times, and at the end he said something like, you're speaking like a Nazi, you're thinking like a Nazi. So I'm very, very supportive of his presentation of the problem. I was never that supportive of his presentation of the solution.
Got it. The bridge will be over here.
Computer man.
How did they make it? How much?
I don't mind the difference.
I'm trying to tell the computer to
Send
to the projector.
I did it a few days ago on a different computer.
Moshe has it plugged in.
That's not the problem. That is not the problem.
It's illegal to wear the body on a T-shirt.
Okay, so let's continue in the meantime. So I have a graph, and basically that graph, I call it the Tekhelet graph. And there's 4 places you can be on the graph. The graph, of course, it goes like this, like a regular statistics graph. And on one side, you have people who say, there's no way that's Tekhelet. There's almost, what we use today for Tekhelet. There's almost nobody in that group. I don't know anyone who's willing to say that, not a scientist and not a rabbi, who's going to say it's not Tekhelet. On the other side, you have people say, I know and believe 100% that this is the right Tekhelet. And there's not a lot of people in that group either. There are a few rabbis who do believe that it's 100%, no doubt. On the other side, you have, on going down the graph, you have 100% is Tekhelet. I believe it's Tekhelet, which is where most people who are in the Tekhelet, where Tekhelet fall today. And on the other side, you have people who say, I'd rather not know. And that's the group I was in. Because frankly, if it is Tekhelet, then I have a mitzvah to wear. And it's not so expensive, but it's not so cheap either. And I really didn't want to then have to start ordering and figure out how to tie them and what strings to use. And it's a very complicated thing that we're not going to talk about today. I'm hoping that anybody who's up on this side of the graph will at least get to the top of the graph where it says, it's at least to there where it says it's a safek if it's Tekhelet. And once it's a safek, then it's a question if you have an obligation to wear it or not. we have all kinds of questions that pop up with the Tekhelet. For example, why are so many people wearing Tekhelet? Why are so many people not wearing Tekhelet? Is it our minhag to wear Tekhelet? If it's even a minhag at all or a halacha. What if it isn't the right Tekhelet? What is a chilazon? Tekhelet has to be made from a chilazon. We're going to discuss this as we go on. What is a chilazon? What does it mean when the Gemara says it's the color of the sea? What does the Gemara mean when it says it resembles a fish? What does the Gemara mean when it says it comes up every 70 years? And even if we manage to figure out what a chilazon in modern Hebrew today is, a snail, it doesn't mean... Okay, so
it's your laptop does not want to let me change the settings.
Okay, so we are going.
The computer will not load the page in which it will allow me to change the settings.
I can't get it any better. The Gemara also says it comes up every 70 years. What does it mean that it comes up every 70 years? If we, like I said, a chilazon is a snail in modern Hebrew. That doesn't mean that in the times of the Mishnah and the Gemara that a chilazon was a snail. So how do I know what a chilazon is? It also says that the Tekhelet was nignaz. It was buried. It was hidden away. What does nignaz mean actually? How do we make the dye? Even if it is Tekhelet, who says we should wear it now? We have so many questions. Why do we have so many questions? I normally don't use this. I have them at Seget, but without them at Seget, it's... without the presentation, it's a little... I want to keep my order.
You know what I mean?
It's very interesting because the Torah doesn't tell us anything about Tekhelet. It doesn't tell us what it is. It doesn't tell us what it's made from. The little bit we know are from some ambiguous Gemaras. Why doesn't the Torah tell us what Tekhelet is? Because they knew. Does the Torah tell us what silver is? Does the Torah tell us what gold is? No, the Torah doesn't tell us what these things are because people knew what it is. It didn't need to be defined. We Jews have been trying to do the same mitzvot for the last 3,333 and 3/4 years approximately since we got the Torah at Sinai. We try to wear the same tefillin. We try to keep the same laws of kashrut. We eat the same matzah on Pesach, more or less. Okay? Minhagim, over time, customs. Over time, if I say a word you don't understand, please let me know. Minhagim, customs, over time change. Mitzvot from the Torah do not change. Okay? Is there any other mitzvah out of the 613 mitzvot that was so forgotten? We don't know another one that was forgotten like this one was. Why was it forgotten? Did it have to do with persecutions? What's the reason it was forgotten? We're going to discuss all of this. Where is the first place we see the mitzvah of Tekhelet? So Rav Menachem in his Parsha Shiur last week was telling you about where we have the mitzvah of remembering Mitzrayim, and he told you about the third paragraph of Shema. Also, by the way, you said Birkat HaChodesh this week. Okay, not last week. Why?
It's going to be full screen on this.
I'm sorry. So the first place in the third paragraph of Shema, you say you have to put a string of Tekhelet on the tzitzit. That's all it says. That's what we know about the Tekhelet from as far as tzitzit go. Okay, Tekhelet is mentioned 49 different times in the Tanakh. Okay, it's mentioned in different things that we cover the Mishkan with, that are going to the Mishkan, the different types of curtains and separations that were there. It's mentioned as the clothes of the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol, his whole me'il, he had a special jacket he wore that was totally made out of Tekhelet. A Kohen Hediot, a regular Kohen, he had an avnet, a special belt that was most likely made out of Tekhelet. Also, the Kohen Gadol had to wear tzitz, had to wear a special crown that had to be connected with a Ptil Tekhelet, with a string of blue. In Sefer Yechezkel, he talks about Tekhelet. He says it's the clothing of the Assyrian soldiers who are coming to attack, the Babylonian soldiers who are coming to attack, that they wear special Tekhelet to show how special they are. And we even have a couple parshas ago with, first of all, Yosef gets the Ketonah to Pasim. Why does that make the brothers so jealous? Yes. Oh, 1 second. Why did they get so jealous? You have to understand, dyeing clothes was only invented approximately 200 years before this. It wasn't popular to have clothes with colors. And he gets a ketonah of all these colors. So you can understand a little better why the brothers might have been so jealous. It was super, super expensive, super, super rare, and Yosef gets one. And not just of one color, of pasim, of different colors. And it's very interesting. When Yaakov sends the brothers down to Mitzrayim the second time, he tells them to take Mizmirot ha'aretz, from the best things of the land. The Midrash tells us, what are the best things of the land? The first one the Midrash tells us, it's the Tekhelet. Take the Tekhelet with you. So we see that the Tekhelet shows up many, many times, 49 times explicitly, several times it's hinted to in the Tanakh. We also see, what's the first time the Tekhelet's mentioned in the Tanakh? It's not in Parshat Shlach with the Tzitzi. What's the first time? Anybody know?
Pekude?
Are we on?
Is it in Sefer Shmo?
Yes.
The
I
materials
remember
out.
there's one in Pekude. But it's probably earlier.
Parshat
You should
Truma.
put it somewhere.
By Kuli Truma, and it says gold. It says, "Bring me gold, silver, and what's the third thing? Nechoshet, copper." And then it says also, "Bring me Tekhelet, Argaman, and Tolat Sheni." It says they bring gold, silver, and copper in order of their value. And then it says, bring me Tekhelet, a purple dye, Argaman, and also red dye in order of their value, meaning Tekhelet is the most valuable one of all of them. Okay, now, Ketonat HaPasim, we spoke about Ketonat HaPasim. The Gemara where we mention, where we talk about Tekhelet and all the laws of Tekhelet, it's the fourth parak of Menachot. It's called Parak HaTekhelet, surprisingly. And it's a very ambiguous Gemara. Oh, you were great. Thank you so much.
It's work.
1 second. Okay, I'm going to fix the raffle so you win the book.
You didn't hear that, Ruben and Dominic didn't hear that.
By the way, speaking of books, Rabbi Nachum Tekhelet would like to donate these 2 books to the Beit Midrash. This is the English book that we're raffling in Hebrew. And this is a bunch of amazing, amazing articles about Tekhelet. Mishiach here.
Ruben,
Is that it?
Ruben, if you pull the projector back,
Pardon?
the picture will get bigger. Oh, there we
If
go.
I pull it back?
Yeah.
That's fine. It's fine.
there
That's
you
fine
go.
as it is.
Okay, great.
Just pull the projector back a little bit.
Oh, okay.
It's bigger and bigger. There we go.
Okay, this is what I was telling you about the graph. We're going to skip this as we spoke about it. By the way, the first snail I ever found, and the snails...
Oh, escargot.
Wait, don't ruin it. I said, jump to the side. This is the snail we're talking about, by the way. Okay? And if this guy I found, and he actually spoke to me, and he said, do me a favor, before you make Tekhelet out of me, please take me to the car dealership, get me a car, and write a big S on the side. I said, why do you need that? He says, when I drive by, I want everyone to say, look at that escargot. Okay?
Escargot is.
Huh? You know what escargot is.
The French people.
What's escargot?
French for snails.
French for us now.
Okay, these are all the questions I told you. I mentioned all the questions people have about Tekhelet. That's where it shows up. Here's different places that the Tekhelet is mentioned. These are different coverings in the Mishkan. We're not going to go through all of them.
Oh, that's the.
Oh, the ephod.
And also about Mordechai, there's a lot of mention of Tekhelet. We might talk about that later if we have time. These are the psukim that are involved. We spoke about that a little. This is from my favorite book, The Little Midrash Says. Okay, it tells you what all the different... You see all these things, and the Me'il, up here there was a Ptil Tekhelet holding this up, the ephod, the whole Me'il was added to Tekhelet, the Avnet was probably Tekhelet. Okay, this is the Gemara I told. Now let's get to this Gemara. This is the ambiguous Gemara.
Is the only mention of Tekhelet in the entire, or the source of Tekhelet in the Torah?
I'm sorry?
Is this the only mention? Of
49 times it's mentioned. This is the only time it's told about tzitzit. It's talked about many times with the Mishkan and the Kohen Gadol. Okay, so this Gemara says, Chilzon, its body resembles an ocean, its form resembles a fish, it comes up once every 70 years, and its blood, they use to dye Tekhelet, therefore its blood is very, very expensive. Okay, so what does its form mean? Does it mean the eggs? Does it mean the shell? Does it mean the snail inside? What does it mean that it resembles? Where's the resemble? It resembles a fish. Exactly. Its texture, its smell, its color, its anatomy. What is a dog?
Fish.
Rambam says a dog is anything that's in the ocean. Okay? Do snails even have blood? How do I know that this is somewhat allegorical? Snails don't have blood. So it's telling me about the snail's blood. So these words can't mean exactly what they say. Okay, what does it mean it comes up in 70 years? Why does Rambam even mention this? The Radziner Rebbe, who found a different type of Tekhelet that's not accepted today, about in the mid-1800s, he didn't have a problem with the fact that it came up once in 70 years. Rabbis use that today as an excuse, but the Radziner Rebbe didn't have a problem with this. The people who wore Tekhelet didn't have a problem with this. Okay? And secondly, it doesn't make sense because there were families, generations of dyers, one generation after another. It doesn't make sense that it came up once every 70 years. So Rav Belsky, who was one of the greatest poskim in the United States, the posek of the OU, passed away a few years ago. He says, what does it mean? It's like a number of different creatures that all of a sudden there's a ribui, there's a swarm that will come up. It comes up once in a while. The Rambam he doesn't even mention this. He says that you find it in Yam HaMelech. In Yam HaMelech, he doesn't mean the Dead Sea, he means the Mediterranean Sea. Okay? What is a chilazon? So, when we say that the chilazon resembles a fish, if you look closely, the snail, this is like the head, the body, and the tail. So maybe it's the form of the shell. Okay?
Is that a unique snail that's different than other snails?
So there's 1,000 types of murex.
What?
Murex trunculus, that's the name of the snail, I'm sorry. This is called a murex trunculus. Okay, in Hebrew it's called Agaman Kehei Kotzim. I don't know if you care about the Hebrew right now. And there's about 1,000 different species. We're not sure if all the species are kosher for Tekhelet or not. And now the people who originally found Tekhelet in the 80s, they're getting older, and they're hoping that the next generation of rabbis and students who come up will be able to do more in-depth research and find out if we can use other types of snails, other types of murex snails as well. Right now, we only use these type of snails, and we'll talk about that soon. Now we know that this is from the Tosefta. It says Tekhelet en kshara ela min hachilazon. The only type of Tekhelet that is kosher is from the chilazon. If it's not from the chilazon, it's pasul. You're not allowed to use it. The Rambam tells us what's a chilazon. It's some type of sea creature with a shell. Rashi tells us in Sanhedrin that the Tekhelet is some type of worm, a tolat. So now we know it has a shell. We know it's a type of worm. If you take a worm plus a shell, what do you get?
I don't know. A worm is not a shell, and a shell is not a worm.
Right, but if you put the two of them together, what's inside of here? A slug. A slug. Not chipushit. That's the gross things you step on that you don't want outside your house. Whatever. It's a snail with no shell.
A slug.
Yeah,
a slug.
A worm.
So,
Slug.
okay. Then we see Rashi over here. Right, chilazon is what you call in Laaz. In French, you call it a limps. Limps is French, in Old French for snail. And if you're not happy trusting the Jewish sources, let's go to secular sources. This is from Emperor Theodosius, about the year 350. And he says, anybody who has Tekhelet will be subject to punishment. It's forbidden to make Tekhelet, to wear Tekhelet, to own Tekhelet, because it's so expensive. It's only reserved for royalty. And he says, the blood of the purple shellfish. So we see that it's a shellfish. Okay? Nero was the first person to make a gezerah, a decree that no one's allowed to have Tekhelet. And we know that different historians of the time, Aristotle, who's about 350 BCE, Vitruvius and Strabo, who were about the first century BCE, all say that it's a snail, that it's this snail specifically, and they also tell how to make the Tekhelet in different ways. And the last historian was Pliny the Elder, who I found it was absolutely shocking that he has a beer named after him. So I figured instead of he's not one of my favorite people. He was very close with Vespasian. If you know of Vespasian, he's the one who met Yochanan ben Zakkai coming out of the old city when he was hiding in the coffin. And he said, I'll give you one wish. And Yochanan ben Zakkai said, give me Yavne and all of its wise people. Pliny the Elder, who was the personal historian of Vespasian, also says that it's a snail. And here we have an interesting, it says about the clothes in the desert that their clothes didn't wear out when they were in the desert. And here in this midrash, what does it mean their clothes didn't wear out? It says that their clothes grew with them the same way that the snail has a shell on it that grows with it. I put some Far Side cartoons in case you were bored with me speaking. So I find Far Side is the most appropriate cartoons. There's never nothing, and you can just find anything in Far Side. There's a lot of Far Side cartoons. You see here, what does it mean that it looks like the sea? They don't come out. They camouflage themselves with the bottom of the sea. Maybe that's what it means when it says it looks like the sea. And Rav Avram ben Rambam had a son, for those who don't know. He says that getting Tekhelet is like cracking nuts open, which would mean that it's something in a shell.
Is it more like an oyster then? Wouldn't that be
We
more
know
like
right
an
now. We
oyster
know
to
it's something
crack
in a
up?
shell. We know it's something in a shell. You have to crack it open. The way you do it, I was going to explain this later. The way we do it, there is a gland over here, and you have to crack the snail here and get the gland out. Okay? By the way, you can pass this around and look at them if you want. And if they ever get a very hard shell that we can't crack, we're in trouble because we won't be able to make Tekhelet anymore. Okay. Now, your question is like an oyster. How do we know that the MT is Murex trunculus, the snail? How do we know Murex trunculus is the same as the chilazon of Chazal? So first of all, there's a legend that Hercules' dog went and was sniffing around. They didn't have any colored dyes. Sniffed the snail, and he got purple on his nose. By the way, purple, argaman, and Tekhelet blue are made out of the same snail. And I'll explain that in a little bit later. Okay? We also see, when you make coins, you put the most important things of your country, your economic importance, your national importance, you put those on the coins. Here is a Murex trunculus. Here is a Murex trunculus. Here is a Murex trunculus.
Coins of Israel?
Huh?
Coins of Israel?
Coins of Tyre and Sor. I say Sor in English. Tyre, the other one, Sidon. Sorry. Okay, so Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai decides to go up to Sidon one day, and he wants to go to Starbucks to get a cup of coffee. He's using these coins to pay for his coffee. Okay, we have tons of places we found. This is a Ptil. You know what a Ptil is? It's an archaeological mound of layer upon layer and layer of civilization. This is a Ptil full of trunculus snails. Shikmona near Haifa. This is in Ashdod. This is in Shikmona near Haifa. In Haifa, we found a pile of Murex trunculus snails that's 150 feet by 300 feet. I don't know. I don't remember how high it is. Literally millions of these snail shells. Okay?
What does that suggest?
What were they doing with millions of snail shells they were cracking open?
They were exporting dye out by the shore.
Next to the snail shells, we have pottery and vats that are colored with Tekhelet. We have a special chemist. He lives in Renana. He specifically goes out. This is from Mashash Morabat, which is an amazing hike. I'm also a tour guide. You ever want to go to Mashash Morabat? It's an amazing, amazing hike where Bar Kokhba's men were hiding out. We found Tekhelet. We tested it. It's made out of the Murex trunculus. This is from Masada. Here's Tekhelet. We tested it. It's made out of Murex trunculus. So we have a lot of proofs that the Murex trunculus, that this snail is thing. We also have
It's a Latin term for that specific term.
We also have this Gemara, which is very interesting, that Hashem says anybody who puts something else on their tzitzit besides Tekhelet, I'm going to take punishment out on him. Now, it goes to a lot of trouble to warn us about something called Kala Ilan that we'll discuss in a second. Kala Ilan is a Tekhelet that comes out of a tree, a blue dye that comes out of a tree, and he says, don't ever wear Kala Ilan because I'll punish you for it. You have to imagine, if there was another snail that's making purple or blue dye at the same time, in the same place, and the Gemara goes to so much trouble to say, don't you ever use this dye that comes out of a tree, and there's a second industry of snail dyeing, don't you think the Gemara would have went to the trouble to tell us, don't use the other snail too? And it doesn't say anything about another snail. Now what happens is the Tekhelet gets lost. The Now we can only wear white because the Tekhelet has been buried or hidden or sunk. If the Midrash Tanchuma writes it's hidden, so how can we claim to have found it? So here's the Ma'ariel, and the Ma'ariel tells us that there's no problem to re-find the Tekhelet. A lot of rabbis will tell you, no, it's nignaz. Nignaz means we can't find it till Beit HaMikdash. That doesn't make sense because we were using Tekhelet until probably about 700 years after the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. So I'm curious, I don't know how Rabbanim Gdolim...
For tzitzit?
Yes. I don't know how Rabbanim Gdolim can say that you can only wear Tekhelet during the time of Beit HaMikdash. We're going to skip this because this is just a little bit of summary. Now, we have a concept, Sfek De'arai to the Chumrah. When you have something that's a doubt, but it's a mitzvah from the Torah, then you be strict about it. So, for example, the most common example is an etrog. When you have an etrog, if you're not sure if it's an etrog, you still use it, but you won't make a bracha on it if you're not sure. So, for example, which one of these do you guys think is not an etrog?
Probably small one.
That green one, fourth from the left.
This one.
Yeah.
Very good guess, except they're all etrogim. I was tricking you. Okay. If you saw this, would you make a bracha on it?
No.
That's an etrog. That's a dragon etrog.
No, because...
We don't make a bracha on it because it's some questions, but if you don't have another etrog, you can use this. Would you make a bracha on this etrog?
Oh, Moroccans might.
No, it's a lemon. It's a lemon. Don't make a bracha. And on this, the biggest etrog that's ever been found, would you make a bracha on that?
It's not a pumpkin?
Yeah, exactly. It's a pumpkin. I don't know where they got this from. Okay.
Wait, that's a pumpkin?
Yeah, guys, I gotta. We're running out of time, and I want to do as much as I can. Rosh Shafran, who's an Av Beit Din in Bnei Brak, who's been very famous lately in the news because the whole tragic story of Chaim Wilder. When he was judged by Rav Shmuel Eliyahu, he says, "I don't want to be judged by Rav Shmuel Eliyahu. I want to be judged by Rosh Shafran." And then he changed his mind and said, "I want to be judged by somebody else." I shouldn't even have highlighted anything here because the whole letter is very interesting. What he basically says is, why did the great rabbis of Tay not accept Tekhelet? They're afraid of making changes and they don't know where it'll go to. But it doesn't mean it's not Tekhelet. This is a letter back to Rav Shafran from the nephew of the rabbi of Bub, from the Bub of a Rebbe. We're not going to skip that right now. So why do people not wear Tekhelet? Rav Ari Leibovich, who's a student of Rav Shechter from YU. Rav Shechter's the head of YU, if you're not familiar with him. He's a big posek. My parents never were married by halacha, so for their 25th anniversary, my brother and I, who also studied Machon Meir, wanted to make them a kosher wedding, and there were a lot of questions. In the ketubah, do we write betulta, which generally means virgin? My parents have been married for 25 years and have 2 kids. And all kinds of things, all those questions. Eventually, I asked Rabbi, who went to Rabbi, eventually they got to Rav Shechter, who's one of the biggest poskim in the United States. He's a student of his. He says there are 3 basic reasons why people don't wear Tekhelet. People aren't interested since it can't be 100% proven. Either they feel that science is not relevant to halacha, or just archaeology is not relevant to halacha, because there's a lot of archaeological proof, or there's machlokot of the Rishonim. For those who don't know, Rishonim are all the rabbis who were before the Shulchan Aruch, which was 1563. Achronim are the rabbis who were after the Shulchan Aruch, the 400 years before the Shulchan Aruch. Okay? And other people, which is basically just Rav Soloveitchik, says they don't have a Masorah to wear Tekhelet, and it's a very strange thing. Even Rav Shechter, who was Rav Soloveitchik's main student, has a problem with this.
What's a Masorah?
A Masorah is a tradition. Okay? There's another group of people who don't wear it because they're researched, but they're not convinced of the authenticity. Again, that makes it a safek. So why would they not wear it? And there's other people who concluded that it's at least a safek. Some people can say it's 100% Tekhelet, but they don't wear it publicly for outside reasons. And I know of great rabbis that I'm not allowed to say their names that we make Tekhelet for, but they don't publicize the fact that we're Tekhelet. Rav Belsky, the one I showed you before, was the posek of the OU and passed away a few years ago. He wore Tekhelet, but he would never discuss it in public. He didn't want to be associated with groups of people who wear Tekhelet. There are rabbis who think anybody who wears Tekhelet, it has to be also somebody who goes up to Har HaBayit. And for example, the YU, the American crowd generally is against going up to Har HaBayit. And the Rabbanim Rashim are against going up to Har HaBayit. Rav Shechter, for example, who's one of the biggest poskim in the United States, doesn't go up to Har HaBayit, but wears Tekhelet. But a lot of rabbis say, no, those are all crazy people who do all these crazy things, and they don't want to be associated with that type of public. So they and some of them won't wear it at all, and some hide it under their clothes. innovation is automatically suspect. Here we see a tshuva of Rav Moshe Feinstein, who passed away in 1986, the greatest posek in the United States until then, who was very against using Shabbat clocks, Shabbat timers. I don't know anyone who doesn't use one today. This is a very interesting question.
So what did Rav Feinstein
He was
say?
against it.
Against using Tekhelet.
No, this is about Shon Shabbat. I'm just talking about
Shon
innovation
Shabbat.
right now.
Oh, innovation.
Right. So he was against it very much, but today everybody uses it. This was a question to Rav, I think it's Rav Bakshi Daron or Rav Amar, I can't remember right now, and I can't see the writing too small, about whether they can put something into street lights that would save lives, but it would be automatically affected by the people standing in the streets, and he was very, very cautious about it. He wasn't sure if we should use it. He wanted to try other methods first before we do something that might cause a Chilul Shabbat, which it's a complicated, but we have trouble with innovation, which means what alterations can we make to halacha? What is the difference between a hidor, making a mitzvah nicer, a chumrah, being strict about a mitzvah, and an alteration that could possibly take us down the wrong path? Okay, so how did we lose the Tekhelet? First of all, blue is very rare in nature. It almost doesn't exist. There's no natural blue pigments. If you eat a lot of carrots, your skin will turn a tint of orange. There's nothing that has a blue pigment that will turn you a little bit blue. Although I did read an article recently that there's some type of disease that causes you to sweat in different colors, including blue. I can't remember the name of the disease now.
There's
Okay.
chickens that
Cold temperature.
can lay blue
Your
chicken
body
eggs.
turns blue.
So we're gonna talk about that 1 second. Less than 10% of the 300,000 species of flowers are blue. Google says that the word blue only comes into it's always the last color that comes into a language because blue just doesn't exist. In English, it says it only comes in much later. It's the main category color accepted in a language. And in Hebrew, it says very interesting. It says the word blue is a very late development that only came in the Middle Ages. Okay? And until then, blue was generally called black. So the Rambam says, what is Tekhelet? He says it's black. But there was no word for blue. He wanted to say Tekhelet. He can't say it's Tekhelet, and there was no other word for blue. Okay? It's also the most colorful in languages. We have all these different expressions. Rav Chaim Twersky was told by the Sismoy in 1975. He wrote a letter. He says, I'm trying to find a way to make blue dye out of snails. And he got this letter back. Sorry, Rabbi. I asked all of my colleagues, and no one knows of any snail that gives a blue dye, only purple. So all we could make out of the shells, my shells are still here, right? The only dye we could make was purple. We couldn't make a blue dye out of them. Okay, so we do have a few animals. We have the blue dart frog, the morpho butterfly, the blue tarantula. However, they don't actually. How does color work? The colors get absorbed from the light, and then one color gets reflected back. Anytime you see something blue, that's not how it works. I don't know if you guys know the magician from the 1970s, Doug Henning. He never wanted you to think it was magic. You just go, it's an illusion. It's an illusion when you see blue. It's not a reflection of the color. It's a way that they can bend the waves. They can trick you into thinking you're seeing blue when you're not actually seeing blue. But that's more than I want to get into right now. So I said there's no blue, but maybe I'm lying. Okay? So, blue, the color blue dye was invented in Crete by the Minoans about 4,000 years ago. Just to put that in perspective, Avram Avinu was born in 1813 BCE, 3,834 years ago. So this Avram Avinu and the blue color is relatively about the same time, which is why it was very new when Yosef got the Ketonet Pasim. He got the color of colors. Okay? We see in many different languages, Akkadian, which is a very old language, older than Avram Avinu. We see mentioned, before Avram Avinu's time, Taklitu and Argamanu being mentioned. In Aramite, it's called Taklita. Until then, what colors were your clothes? The color of sheep, brown or white. We didn't know how to dye anything permanently. Any color you could put in would wash out. The Ramban tells us that even until his days, which there was no more Tekhelet from the snails, only royalty can wear blue. Nobody else is allowed to wear blue. This is from the Justinian Codex, April 7, 529, who writes, anybody who dares own blue, has blue, seeks blue, carries blue, wears blue, you have a little bit in your house, he may know that he incurs risk of losing his property and his head. So Jews can't make Tekhelet anymore. It's impossible. And we have a Gemara here. It was very interesting that two rabbis are coming from Rakat is Tiberias. And they get caught by a Roman group of soldiers, and they have Tekhelet in their hands. This is, by the way, this is the time of Rava, which is about 282, he lived 282, 352 CE, which means, again, long after the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. And it says thank God they were let go and they weren't killed for it. They had a miracle done for them, they weren't killed for it. By the way, this is the coat of the Kohen Gadol. It weighs about 2.5 kilos. Tekhelet cost at one point 60 times the price of gold of the same weight.
Wow.
So if we're making a coat, and we made this, by the way, we made a coat for Machon Meir for the Temple Institute. It's 2.5 kilos. Gold is about $60 a gram. You multiply $60 a gram times 2,500 grams times, 20 times the amount. It comes out to about $3.5 million. And how many coats were there? There was a coat for him. There was a spare coat. Every time you changed Kohen Gadol, you had to make a new coat that fit him perfectly. If it and there was a period where the Kohen Gadolim weren't the greatest guys, and we were going through a new Kohen very, very often. Okay, and you want the Kohen, you want the coat to fit the Kohen perfectly, so he doesn't end up being like Naftali Bennett, who got made fun of at that recent conference, the ecological conference, where everyone was making fun of him because his suit wasn't tailored. Okay, so he had to wear a perfect coat.
Okay, so was the first Czechoslovakian president?
Okay, you guys have. We're gonna skip a little bit now because you guys need to be done by 1:15. I want to start. Is that okay?
Here we have a minion.
Is that okay? Okay. So this is the Kala Ilan. This is the indigo plant that the Gemara warns us not to make it from. Okay. The Radbaz tells us that they stopped needing Tekhelet because they could make blue out of indigo. The problem was at the beginning, indigo faded very easily. Once you wash your clothes, the indigo was gone. Once they found a way to make it more permanent, they started only using indigo because it was much, much cheaper. And they stopped using the snails whatsoever. But by this time, everybody forgot how to make
that was for textiles, meaning?
Yes, for textiles, for dyeing.
I see.
Okay? So, there is the Gemara tells us that there's no way to check if something is Tekhelet or from the snail or Tekhelet from the plant. Today we do have a way, and we have a mashgiach that comes in. By the way, our mashgiach does not wear Tekhelet. The Rav Reuben, who does a lot of the kashrut for meats, he's our Rav mashgiach. He also doesn't wear Tekhelet, but they check to make sure that our Tekhelet comes from snails and doesn't come from anything else. They also checked that everybody who works in them follows the Yerei Shamayim. I had to go for a personal interview with Rav Reuben for that, so I could work there. So how does Tekhelet get lost? Well, the royalty wore Tekhelet and made it forbidden for everyone else to produce it. The royalty found this more inexpensive way. Oh, anybody want to go to Minchen Yad Binyamin? This Morashah, Rav Menachem was talking about this in his shiur last week. I listened to your shiurim. I don't lose my connection. Hold on.
That was the pasuk we were thinking about. That was the pasuk we were thinking about. Where is it from?
Okay. So, 761 Amorim are mentioned by name in the Talmud, in the two Talmuds, the Babylonian and the Jerusalem. 367 live in Eretz Yisrael between 200 and 350. 394 live in Bavel, 200 to 500. They do not wear Tekhelet already. During this period, not everyone's wearing Tekhelet. Somewhere between the end of the Roman-Byzantine period and the Arab conquest, which was about 634, Tekhelet disappears. It wasn't that Tekhelet was lost, but it was lost as part of the loss of Eretz Yisrael. So what happens if we return to Eretz Yisrael? Likely, the Arabs, when they conquested, they destroyed whatever was left of the Tekhelet factories. That's what Rav Herzog suggested. We're really not sure how it disappeared, but that's the time it disappears during the Arab conquest. Okay? So now, everyone becomes interested in Tekhelet. The secular researchers are interested. The Jewish researchers are interested. This is not the Radziner Rebbe. This is his son. There are no pictures of the Radziner Rebbe. And the Radziner Rebbe he was a tremendous Talmid Chacham, wrote a lot of great books, wrote 3 books on Tekhelet, that today you buy them into one book. And this is the Radziner Rebbe. His grandfather was Rav Mordechai Yosef Mem Yud. He wrote the book called Mei Shiloach, if you've ever heard of it. The last descendant was Rav Shlomo, who was killed in the Holocaust, and then the Radziner Rebbe went to his son-in-law. There were three suppositions that were made. One, the source of the color Tekhelet is a marine chilazon. Two, from these marine chilazonot we can only produce a purple color, and the color of Tekhelet is blue. Well, we're only making purple, so they can't all be true. So the secular sources said, well, then this one's wrong. The Jews are wrong. The color of Tekhelet is not blue. The Radziner Rebbe is very, very upset about this. He warns his students not to fall into the trap of believing these milumadim, these intelligent people whose knowledge and research have led them to a mistaken conclusion. And he says that the second statement is wrong, that it says it only makes purple. He says it can make blue, and if it's not from there, then we have to find another marine animal that can do it. The Rebbe trades in his Beit Midrash and goes to the largest and first ever public aquarium in Italy. He made 3 or 4 trips. He spent a year there studying all the fish and all the animals in the aquarium. Rumors are that he convinced the Vatican to see the Kelim of the Beit Mikdash so he could study the Big Day Kahuna, the Kohen Gadol's clothes. Don't know if that's true. It's a rumor. He came home with the Sepo Fisinalis, which is called the cuttlefish or the inkfish, and decided this was the Tekhelet. He gave the fish to dye chemists who added chemicals to make it blue. This is a blue called Prussian blue, and it is a result of oxidation of this chemical with salt. It's cyanide and iron.
This is the Radziner Rebbe?
Yes, this is his. Yes,
Squid?
this is Radziner Rebbe. A squid, yes, it's a cuttlefish actually.
The squids, they just usually eject,
It's like if a squid and a fish had a baby, it would be this, right? So he thought it was that ink.
It's like
So
a,
cute.
it's a defense thing.
Yes. We're going to skip this. Okay, along comes Rav Herzog. Rav Herzog says he does his doctorate on Tekhelet. His doctorate's impossible to read. It's written, I think, in 6 different languages. It's the most brilliant piece of work ever. He studies the Radziner's Tekhelet, and it's not working. And then he asks for the strings of the Radziner. So his grandson sends him these strings. He sends them to the 2 best chemists in the world, and they say, listen, Rabbi, this blue is not organic, it's chemical. He writes, I rubbed my eyes, he writes. He was the chief rabbi of Ireland. He replaces Rav Kook as the Ashkenazi chief rabbi. We're going to skip a little bit of this because we don't have time now. This is his grandson who's named after him and is the president of Israel today. His son was also president of Israel, came to speak in Machon Meir when I was here. He sees that there's ancient blue shards of pottery. He sees that there are coins with the thing. But he also has a respect for science, and he cannot ignore Jewish tradition that's supposed to be blue. He dies in 1959. The president of Israel was born in 1960, named after him, with this mystery, not understanding how they can make Tekhelet. He had one idea that it might be this. We're not going to talk about this right now. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about chemistry, okay? Not too much. You know what? This is a very nice table. I actually like to study tables periodically. Okay? I don't know if you know all the elements. This is the one called the element of surprise. And we don't need too much chemistry. A little bit more than this, but not much more than this. Okay. So, the Rambam says that you have to add some amanim. You have to add some type of chemicals in order to make the Tekhelet. It just doesn't come out of the snail. So what do? We go fishing for the snail. We crack it open. We take out this, it's hard to see. You cut out a little piece of the gland. You put it in a blender. You dry it out for a few days. And then you put it in a coffee grinder. We don't do that here. It's illegal to fish for snails. We do it in Croatia. And we get boxes of snail guts.
Awesome.
Okay?
It's illegal in Israel?
Snails are very slow. And again, another proof that I can't get into, you can ask Rabbi Menachem another time, but snails, you're chayav for tzeda, for trapping. You're not chayav for trapping something that's slow. I'm sorry. You're not chayav for trapping something that's slow, and you see how slow they are, how long it takes them to play hide and seek. Okay? So why, if you can just pick up a snail, why are you chayav for tzeda? It's another proof that there was something done special about the snail, but we're not talking about that now. So we have a Gemara. Okay, we're going to skip this now. Okay, so how do we make Tekhelet? Let's get into making Tekhelet right now. I'm going to need boiling water in a few minutes.
That was...
I'm going to need someone who can get me boiling water. Okay,
Okay.
first of all, we take... These are our mushed up snail guts. Okay? Anyone want to smell?
I would love to smell.
Nothing
Nothing in the world.
Oh my goodness.
Disgusting.
Okay, I work in this all day. I come home. My family won't let me in the house till I go right to the shower. I'm a little bit rushed, so if I can just, we'll see.
Therefore, it's just
Okay. It smells like dead fish.
General Marini
We
spray,
put
a
in
little bit sweeter.
the mushed up snail guts. Okay? We're going to add the boiling
They
water.
come dried from Croatia?
Yeah, they come like exactly like this. Okay?
Why that from Croatia?
Croatia is where it's legal for them to harvest the snails, and it's along the Mediterranean.
Can you pour that in here for me, please? Sure. And we're going to watch how we miraculously make Tekhelet. All of it. Just pour it all in.
Oh, it's purple. It's dark purple.
Yeah, put it in the sun.
Now,
That's about to done.
I'm going to mix up. It looked purple for a second, didn't it?
Yeah, it looks purple.
But now
to
I'm
me.
mixing it up.
It looks like a dark purple.
It's hard to tell from where you're looking, but you'll see it's going to settle. The water's still going to be clear. It's not going to be purple in a second. The Rambam says that it has to be a color omedet b'yofiyah. It can't wear out. It can't be washed out. Okay? This is good and bad. Because you want to dye that lasts, because you don't want to put it in the wash one time. By the way, you can put Tekhelet in bleach and it won't change its color. It's the only thing in the world that won't change its color, even if you dip it in bleach. You can Google Kan Achadislei Tekhelet. It's a news program, and it's not religious at all. And he puts different types of Tekhelet, and this is the only one that he puts in bleach that, you see the water's turning clear. It's not mixing. This isn't water soluble, which is a problem. So what are we going to do now? We're going to add the caustic soda, which is known as these things. You probably may know it as Drano.
To open up a...
Yeah.
Johnson masterpiece.
Isn't that dangerous?
If it's activated caustic soda, if you touch it, you won't feel it because it'll destroy your nerves.
So
You have to be very careful here, no?
So now I'm going to mix again.
It's mixed in it. If you add, I can't remember what it is. You add something to it.
I'm a little bit rushed, so because you guys bring one of David Mincha supposedly in 5 minutes.
Just one time, what you just added into the beaker.
Hmm?
What was that white powder? That was the
That's the caustic soda. Okay? Caustic soda is also known as lye. If you don't like your roommate, just cover him up in lye while he's sleeping. You won't be around in the morning. Okay? It's a base to melt fats and proteins, and this makes the Tekhelet now, it's going to be water soluble. Now you mix it, and we're getting a little bit of a color in the water. Not too much, but now it's becoming water soluble. That's mentioned in the Tanakh. It's called netter in the Tanakh. Netter was a soap they used when they had blood on their clothes. They would come back.
The detergent used in the time of the Talmud, right?
Right, in the Tanakh even. In Yechezkel it's mentioned. The soldiers would come back, they would use it. Okay? And now we're going to add the sodium. Where's the sodium diethionate? Did I lose a... No, not the citric acid. Where's my other bag? Oh, here it is. Sorry. Okay? Okay, this is a reducing agent. I'm not going to go too much into the details of chemistry, but we add the sodium diethionate, and now we really see that the color is starting to turn a lovely, beautiful shade of not purple, but green.
It's like watching a cooking show.
Again, this is where it's netter. By the way, what's the symbol for sodium?
Na.
Why not SO or SD?
Because sodium in Latin is natrium.
Because it's natrium. Did you read this?
No, I knew that. Oh,
But-
it does say that.
What did we call the cleaning agent in Hebrew in the Tanakh? Netter.
Wow.
So it says it comes from Arabic. It's wrong. It comes from Hebrew. Okay? And this again just tells us that we add different chemicals. Some rabbis are against the fact that we add chemicals, but the chemicals don't affect the color of the blue. We have more specific recipes from the Roman. Pliny says you mix snail, salt, ash, urine, and leave it for 2 weeks. We tried it. It worked. Right, but this is another recipe. But we don't have 2 weeks, and I'm not sure anyone wants to donate their urine. The urine also has to be aged. Then we add the citric acid. Because if we don't add the citric acid, what's going to happen is this is still Drano. Meaning, when I put my wool in for my tzitzit, it's going to eat it away, just like Drano eats away hair in the thing.
It turned yellowish.
Now, can explode, so you have to be careful.
So,
See?
the wire.
This can explode. Okay, we're lucky it didn't explode.
That reaction?
Yes. Okay.
Sounds awful.
At this point now,
Using our drinks and all that stuff.
I take my wool.
Yeah.
By the way, this is the purple. This is the purple that it makes normally. I take my wool. At this point, everything I do from now on has to. You have to say l'shem mitzvat tzitzit. In our factory, we have to sign a piece of paper when we get in that says l'shem mitzvat tzitzit, and we also add l'shem mitzvat tekhelet. We have it on the wall in front of every step that we do. Until now, everything could be done by anybody with no kavanah. From now on, you need kavanah. L'shem mitzvat tzitzit. I take it, I mix it in. Okay, and then I have to put it in the sun. So to save time, we're just going to use. It's okay. I'm going to use this light as the sun. Okay.
It's UV light.
UV light, yes.
What
Okay.
is it doing?
That's ultraviolet light.
The ultraviolet light is taking. I didn't want to spend too much time. There's indigo, which is blue, and there's two bromide atoms. The sunlight takes the bromide atoms, which makes it purple, takes the bromide atoms off, and leaves only the indigo, leaves only the blue. Okay, this was discovered by Professor Otto Elster, who was a Polish Jew who was studying at Schenker Institute in Israel. He discovered it in 1985. How did he discover it? Because if you take a whiff of this stuff, it smells horrible, and he couldn't take the smell, so he would put it on the windowsill and notice that on cloudy days it turned out purple, but on sunny days it was blue. He presents his findings in 1985 to the Association of Oriental Dyers in Tokyo, Japan. A couple years later, the Jews hear about this. Rav Tevger hears about it, and he just goes and decides he's going to try and do it himself. He goes, he collects a bunch of snails, he makes it himself. He makes 2 pairs of Tekhelet, the first 2 pairs of Tekhelet in at least 1,300, probably more like 1,500 years. Makes one for himself, one for his chavruta. His chavruta says, very nice, puts it in the drawer and says, it's very nice, I'll wear it someday. But he wears the Tekhelet. This is a film. We don't have time for the film. Now what happens is Joel Guberman, Baruch Sturman, whom is now the head of the Amutah that I work for, and Dr. Ari Greenspan, who's a dentist in Efrat, hear about this. They go to Rav Tevger and say, let's make this for everybody. He says, I can't do that. It's too much. It's a big job. How am I going to get all those snails? Every pair of tzitzit's about 40 snails.
Wow.
Every pair of tzitzit. About 40 snails. He says, let us worry about that for you. After 1,300 years, the mystery is solved. Where did the Tekhelet go? How to make the Tekhelet? The secret of Tekhelet is rediscovered. Ptil Tekhelet is founded to bring this lost mitzvah back to life. Until today, we have made hundreds and hundreds of thousands of sets.
Wow.
By the way, I gave Rav Menachem a coupon code. If anybody wants to order Tekhelet, you get a 15% discount. The books, the Tekhelet.
It's just the Tekhelet, not the tying of the tzitzit, not just the actual...
It's a 15% on whatever you order.
Okay.
Okay? The cheapest pair is Rambam 7. That's about 100 shekels. For you guys, it would be about 85. I think that's the price. But you need to discuss with Rav Menachem what type of tzitzit you should wear. You need me to finish, don't you? You're looking at your watch. I'm sorry. Okay.
We can do mincha in here. We can do mincha here.
That's
But
what
you need to eat lunch. I don't want to take you.
No, we're going to do mincha now.
And just so we have a lot of proofs. We found more than 60 manufacturing sites all around the Mediterranean basin. In Greek, the snail is called Prophorus. I'll get back to this in a moment. We found Tekhelet, shards of Tekhelet from the times of David and Shlomo that were made out of the snail in Sor and Sidon. We found snails in the homes of Kohanim, Ir David and Har Zion from the period of the Second Temple. My daughter was digging in Jerusalem this week. The garbage they pull out of Beit Mikdash and found one of these snail shells, complete. We have the coins. We have special tablets. We have Minseret Sanchariv. I'm sorry, this is a Greek guy just talking to a rabbi about how amazing. I'm getting to it in a second. With the Greek guy, I don't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry, I'm trying to rush. He's talking about how amazing the Prophor is. It's just a coincidental meeting. We have the Minseret Sanchariv from the Tanakh, which is from 690 BCE, talking about Tekhelet. The most important, the Michtavei El Amarna, which are letters between Egypt and the territories it was ruling from 1500 to 1300 BCE. It says Subatu Tzatakilti, which means that there was a precious oracle sent to Egypt by Dusrata, the king of Mitanni, as a dowry to the Egyptian prince who was to marry his daughter, and it mentions Takriti, which is Tekhelet. I'm going to skip the movie. Okay, prophora, it means snail, or this particular snail in Greek. All of these achronim that I'm not going to get into all say that Tekhelet is made out of prophora, out of this snail. And some people say, well, it's an achronim, it's after the Shulchan Aruch. I don't trust those people so much. They might be right, they might be wrong, I'm not sure. So they'd rather hear from the Rishonim. So if you go to the Rishonim, there's a Gemara here in Brachot where it talks about what time you say Shema. It says when you can tell the difference between Tekhelet Lakarti, between blue and a green color, and the Rav Yah, who's a Rishon before the Shulchan Aruch. This is his own handwriting. He says Bein Porphurim, between the snail, and Bein Parsinin, a green shade. Okay, we're going to skip what Rav Halberstam says. He says some very beautiful things. He says this, but we just don't have time right now. So who does wear Tekhelet? Hasidim, Babaver, New Square Hasidim just started wearing Tekhelet a few months ago. Borough Park, B'nai Brak, many Hezder Rabbanim. There are rumors that the Radziner Tekhelet, that wasn't even correct, that the Panovitcher Rebbe wore it. Some people say Rav Chaim Ozer Rudinsky, who was the best friend of the Chavetz Chaim and the leader of the generation, supposedly wore Tekhelet on his Talit Katan. Rav Chaim Berlin possibly wore Tekhelet. Rav Schlesinger. And these are people who supported wearing Tekhelet. Rav Shmuel Salant, Rav Diskin, Rav Eger. Okay? This is Rav Kanievsky, the Gadol Ador in B'nai Brak, with a conversation in Yiddish where this person's asking him, and Rav Kanievsky saying, I don't wear Tekhelet, but if you believe it's Tekhelet, you're chayav d'oraita to wear it. Rav Scheinberg, who wore 52 pairs of tzitzit, also wore Tekhelet. Rav Zalman Nehemiah Goldberg, who just passed away, walking up to the Torah, is wearing Tekhelet. Rav Belsky, we mentioned. All the Sofer family wore Tekhelet. Yes, Rav Kook also. This is a Talmid of the Chazon Ish who wore Tekhelet. We're going to skip. I have a lot of Rav Arush.
Kamenetsky wore Tekhelet?
Huh?
Kamenetsky wore Tekhelet?
No, he didn't wear it. Rav Kanievsky or Kamenetsky? Did I have him?
The previous.
Sorry. Rav Kamenetsky says he does not wear, but he says that one who does wear, shetavo aleim bracha. Sorry, I apologize. I missed it.
No?
Yeah, Rav Mazuz too. I'm in a rush, so I'm a little bit. Rav Arush, Nisim Black, the basketball player Adamir, whatever his name is, a whole bunch of other people. Rav Sachs, Rav Yonatan Sachs. Okay. All these people wear Tekhelet.
Is it the same one, or they were the Radziner one, or?
No, they wear our Tekhelet. Radziner, nobody wears Radziner. The only people who wear Radziner Tekhelet are Radziner Hasidim and a few Breslev Hasidim. Nobody else wears it. I'm just to give you an idea of how many rabbis do actually wear it. We're not going to go through everybody here. We're going to skip the tying.
Oh, this is the thing.
Okay, because I want to get to the end. Okay, well, we'll get to this in a second. Now you see that the wool has turned to a beautiful color of Tekhelet, right? Now it's a beautiful blue.
That's blue?
It's not?
It looks green to me.
Well, keep your eye on it for a second.
Yummy.
I'm seeing blue.
The projection from the projector is projecting blue onto it.
It's a ploy.
Now, is this called the process of oxidation now?
Yes, now we're doing oxidation. We're adding oxygen to it.
It's healthy to smell this, guys.
It's taking a little bit of time, but if you start looking...
That's the smell of a mitzvah.
I'm seeing shades of blue in the middle.
Where?
The polka dots.
You see dots, you don't see shades.
It's because I didn't have it in the direct sunlight, so it's taking a little more time. But you see it's turning blue.
That's it.
The last time I did it, I got this. Okay? It's supposed to be in direct sunlight or a stronger light. It's possible that my light wasn't strong enough to...
And from this piece of wool will be enough for a set of tzitzis?
No, not at all. This is about 10 chilzonot. You need 40 chilzonot at least to make tzitzit.
That's one corner, basically.
Basically, yeah. You can order this kit, by the way, but you can't. You'd have to order a lot of these kits to make your... You'll see the edges are starting to turn blue.
Is there a mitzvah for me to make
No.
Tekhelet, or no?
You can look at it, you can smell it.
What's this guy? What's the difference?
I see it.
This is what happens if you don't expose it to sunlight. This is what happens. This is what happens when you do expose it to sunlight. Okay? And again, that was discovered by accident because of the smell. I just want to get to the end because I'm really overboard. So Tekhelet, we know that the color blue is a calming feeling. We know that Tekhelet is on our tzitzit. Oh, I got to fix that. Sorry, it wasn't like that yesterday. We know that Tekhelet is on the Kohen Gadol's clothes. We know that Tekhelet is the color of the sky. And we have an interesting Gemara that says, Rav Meir tells us that why is Tekhelet so special and different than all the colors? Because the Tekhelet resembles the ocean. The ocean resembles the Rakia. Rakia we translate as sky, but it's really more of a spiritual type of sky. And the Rakia represents the Kisei Kavod, God's throne of glory. Okay? So we now know that Tekhelet also is the Yam. Tekhelet is the Rakia. Tekhelet is the Kisei Kavod, the throne of glory. Tekhelet is all of these things. Okay? Now, Tekhelet, it looks like the sea. The blue looks like the sea, and it comes from the sea. It comes from the Chilazon. The Tekhelet also looks like the sky, and it also requires the sun, which is in the sky. Now, if you take water, you look at the ocean, what color is it?
It's blue.
Right, easy question. Shouldn't take you so long to answer that one. If I take water in my hand, what color is it?
It's
clear.
Yeah.
If I take the sky and look up at it, what color is it?
It's blue.
If I take a little piece of sky right here in my hand, what color is it?
Clear.
Right. Okay? So, if Tekhelet can be, if water in the sky can be either blue, a beautiful shade of blue, or it can be clear, what does that tell us about the Kisei Kavod, the throne of glory of Hashem? It says, it's basically asking you a question. How do you see Kedusha? How do you feel Kedusha? And the Torah tells me I have two different responsibilities. What does it say about the tzitzit? Uritem, you see them, uschartem, and you remember them. It has to change you. When you look at your Tekhelet, when you take your Tekhelet in the morning, you kiss your tzitzit, it has to change you. It has to be something different about you. You need to internalize the things that you're supposed to internalize, the lesson you're supposed to learn. When I look at my Tekhelet, what else do I see? What am I saying? What is my day going to be like? Is my day going to be clear, or is it going to be Tekhelet? What are my lessons going to be? Clear or Tekhelet? The Gemara says there had to be 7 to 13 chuliyot. Okay? When I kiss my Tekhelet in the morning, I ask myself a question. How am I going to behave during the day? What am I going to take from this day? What am I going to be? What person am I going to be when I go to sleep at night? Am I going to be the same person I was when I woke up in the morning? What does the word Tekhelet mean? The word Tekhelet has a tough at the beginning, a tough at the end. There's a beautiful Rambam here that I can't get into right now, but he says the letter Taf represents it's the last letter, represents all the letters that came before it. You have a Taf at the beginning, a Taf at the end, and in the middle you have the word Kol. Tekhelet encompasses everything, he says. And this is a beautiful, beautiful Rambam. Okay? So and you guys, when you're studying Eretz Yisrael, you need to, and it's a gift of studying Eretz Yisrael. It's not something everybody could do through all generations. What lessons am I going to take and learn from? It's a nice poem, that's the same idea. And last thing I want to mention is the flag of Israel. Okay, where do we find blue in our religious life, and why do we find it there? Our talit bags are blue. Our tefillin bags are blue. The parochet, the covering of the ark, is blue. The stripes on our talit are blue to remind us of Tekhelet. Sometimes they're black. Why? A lot of people say they're black to remind us that we're mourning that we don't have the Tekhelet. But it's possible that we actually do now.
I want to make an Israeli flag dyed with...
It's going to be very expensive. Okay? The white is the background, less noticeable. You see the blue, or at least you see the contrast between the white and blue. Each sphere, the sphere of the different levels of worlds, has a different color. Malchut, kingship, is associated with the color Tekhelet. We don't have to be, we wore black because we were in mourning for not having Tekhelet. We don't have to be in mourning as we've been for 2,000 years. We were reminded not just of any sea. The rabbis tell us that when we say it looks like the sea, it reminds us of Yam Suf. What's special about Yam Suf? It says that the maidservant who was on the banks of Yam Suf and watched the sea split was a greater level than Yechezkel the Navi. She was on a greater level. And the Tekhelet can take us to that level. And we have returned to Eretz Yisrael, and our flag is a Tekhelet. There's 3, I said, the Kohen Gadol wears Tekhelet. I said that the Kohen Hediot, the regular Kohen, wears Tekhelet on his avnet, probably. And you also wear Tekhelet. You take a little piece of that royalty with you. Why is Tekhelet, the mitzvah, given at the end of Parshat Shlach, the end of the story of the spies? Because God just put us down and said, you're going to be punished for generations. But you know what? It doesn't mean you're not special. It doesn't mean you're not part of Am Yisrael. It doesn't mean you're not part of royalty. Wear the Tekhelet. Remember who you are. It's one of the most important things you can do. The Tekhelet reminds you that you're part of Am Yisrael and you have a tremendous responsibility and a tremendous gift. Thank you.
Shakor.
Make it expensive. We go eat and then we come back after we eat because they're already done with mincha.
I apologize.